This fragrance smells like the life of an insect, and it's kind of beautiful. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Often. I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Amouage Figment Man. These reviews are for fragrances I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears in many situations, and are meant to give you a general impression of what it feels to wear the scent. Although I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, especially weird ones like this one, I won't be going into details about notes and accords. I don't think it really helps the end user, and it just ruins the experience in this case. So let's get into it. Amouage Figment Man, this is a controversial one. Before we get into the presentation, I want to spare a couple words about this fragrance specifically. So Amouage Figment Man and Figment Woman are from the Christopher Chong era. He is the previous creative director for Amouage, and he is known for his artistic choice. Amouage Figment Man is one of the more controversial fragrances. It's probably one of the worst reviewed Amouage fragrances on the web. Between the websites, between the videos, everyone says that it smells like poop, it smells like earth, that it's unwearable, that it's crazy animalic, and it's just a crazy, weird fragrance. Honestly, it might be that I'm into a phase where I'm really searching for animalics and that my nose is pretty tolerant. Maybe I've been watching too much of Rogue's 08. But I was kind of underwhelmed when I actually smelled this. This fragrance is actually way more wearable than I thought. So let's get into the presentation first. Amouage Figment, it comes in this sort of iridescent blue-green bottle. I don't really agree per se with the color scheme. The cap is the usual magnetic Amouage. The sprayer is usually really good. Let's give it a spray. The opening is really weird, and we'll get to that. Figment Man, Figment. Figment is, if you think of the word, it's like something that is fictional, something which is imaginary, something which is sparked by imagination. And this fragrance is one of the more transportative fragrances I've ever smelled. Similar to some of Andy Towers' ones. I said in the intro that this one smells like the life of an insect. And for all your video game fans, this smells like Hollow Knight. For everyone else, this really brings you down to earth, literally. It sort of miniaturizes you and gives you a point of view from what's on the ground. It's basically a microcosmo populated by insects, little plants, mold, mushrooms, small reptiles, and small amphibians. And it's the world, it's a damp, dark world. It's the world that you would find under a rock, under the leaves in the forest floor, under rotten and decaying planks of wood in your basement. It's this hidden world that is usually not thought of, and it's very mysterious and alluring in a way. So the opening for this fragrance is what I would call challenging, for sure. It's a strange, acidic, earthy, and green opening. Some would say that the opening of this smells, how to put it, pissy. I don't completely agree with this, but I do understand what the thought process is. So let me explain. The citruses or the acidics in this, combined with the earthy tones and the woody tones, act in a similar way to how you would perceive lemon and chocolate in an ice cream, like combined. It doesn't really sound appealing on paper, but you'd be surprised how interesting they can be and complementary. This fragrance, with its green notes given by some florals or some woods or some vetiver, and this citruses or these like geraniums, something that is giving it this like kind of like a fresh vibe, and the earth, give this fragrance a really strong impression of like this aromatic mold. I can't describe it in any other way. It smells moldy, it smells mossy, it smells wet. And the opening, again, it's very, very strong. Once you get past those 10-15 minutes of this kind of challenging acidity, the scent sort of calms down into this green aromatic, where it stays for a long time. And ultimately, in the deep dry down, we're talking like deep dry down, it will kind of go into this like woody, earthy, a little bit of funkiness. I would say that the scent is pretty linear in itself, and it doesn't really change much, or rather, the imagery that this scent gives you doesn't change. It really draws a picture. It really brings you to a world, and it tells you a story. And it's a story about nothing specific. There's no character in it, but it's the story of a world. It's the story of this, again, as I said, this like micro world. It kind of reminds me of those BBC documentaries shot in macro of the ground floor with insects and little lizards running around, and you have this slow motion world with this atmospheric, beautiful soundtrack to it. And that's exactly what comes to mind when I put this on. So I mentioned that this fragrance is actually surprisingly wearable. What I mean about this is that the user of this, the person who actually puts it on, has a very strong bias towards what this fragrance is, what the meaning is, what the packaging looks like, what the reviews say. They're influenced by all the negative reviews, by all the media covering it. But to the average person that is around you, this kind of passes as a weird aromatic, some weird vetiver fragrance. And I don't think they would think twice about it, other than that you smell kind of weird. But it's not offensive at all. And one thing that I really want to highlight is that a lot of reviews say that this is a dirty scent. And I don't agree at all, because this smells to me like nature. It smells to me like soil and nature and greenery. And I don't think that, I usually associate dirtiness with a more typical animal smell, like a little mammal, like a rodent, like fur, like sweat. And there's none of this in here. This smells like a mushroom that you would pick from the forest floor. And I wouldn't necessarily categorize that as dirty. Yes, there might be some earth on it, there might be some dust, but it's not dirty per se. It's not greasy. And it's the kind of dirtiness, let's call that you would think that like a freshly pulled carrot from like a damp ground is. If you consider that dirty, then this might sound dirty. But to me, again, it's very natural smelling, and it's really, really not offensive. Let's quickly touch on longevity and projection, because that might influence your concept of wearability. So the projection on this is average. As soon as you spray it in those 10-15 minutes of that strong, challenging acidity, it is a very strong projector. But again, it's just 10-15 minutes. And considering that the longevity of this thing is pretty much eternal, those 10-15 minutes really don't mean much. And by eternal, I mean that this is like a 12+ hour fragrance. I wore it today, I showered, and it's still strong on my skin. Well, now I immediately reapplied, but still, this is a commitment. If you wear this, you're committed to the smell for a while. Don't spray it on clothes, because that's even worse. But the sillage is very intimate, so you'll be smelling this, but it's not this like room-filling thing. Another thing I want to say to all the fanboys of Amouage and Christopher Chong and the Lost era is that this is way less challenging than something newer like Amouage Purpose. That smells like old books and dust, like an old dusty library. And that, to me, is way more offensive to the outside compared to this, because that has an enormous projection. So is this an everyday scent? I would say absolutely not. Not because of the challengingness, not because of the animalics that actually don't really smell or get into this. But because it's such an artistic choice, it's such an intelligent and complex scent that really gets your mind going. So this one here, comparing it to a movie, is that movie that really like tickles your brain, that you pull out every now and then when you want to get immersed, fully immersed in a story or in some sort of imagery. So I mean, props to Amouage for creating something like this. I wish more perfumers would do it. All in all, I really like this. I'm really happy I got this. I got this one here and Myth Man in 50 milliliter bottles because I thought that they wouldn't be really wearable, but I still wanted them because, as you may know, they are discontinued. So I think that they are a piece of Amouage history that I wanted to have in my collection. I might not go to them often, but when I do, I'm sure to be impressed. Thanks again for watching, all the comments and interaction. I really appreciate it. Feel free to engage with me in the comments below and just send me some suggestions. Are you interested in a particular fragrance to cover? Maybe I have it, maybe it's in the works, maybe I can acquire it. Thanks again and cheers.